we are going to be talking about the Coastal Adaptation Plan and the Coastal and Marine Management Plan tonight. So thank you all for coming. There's a few people that are still not here, but we might just get started. I'm sure people will join as they when they can. So my name is Danielle. I work for Bellarine Bayside, and I'm involved in the engagement side of things for these projects. First of all, just wanted to welcome you all to the online update. And I also want to acknowledge the Wadawurrung people as the traditional owners of the land, waterways and skies. We pay our respects to elders past, present and emerging. We also want to really acknowledge and say how privileged we are to have the CEO of Wadawurrung Traditional Owners Aboriginal Corporation, who's been part of our project working group. We also have the representative for the Coastal and Sea Country, the Wadawurrung representative, who's also been helping us out with the project. So we've been really privileged to have that. So the purpose of tonight is that we're just going to talk about, just let you know about what's been happening with the projects. As some of you might know, the Coastal Adaptation Plan is currently out for comment until the 15th of March, and it's a pretty heavy read. It's a 166-page report, so just wanted to make sure that there's opportunity for the community to ask questions and just be more informed about it, and also to help you be able to actually have your say on our online Have Your Say page for that project, as well as the CMMP, which is the Coastal and Marine Management Plan. Just a bit of housekeeping. We're just going to make sure everyone is muted for this evening. And we are going to be having a Q&A at the end. So we've got Ali and Kate, who are both presenting about the projects. So if you have any questions, if you could just write them in the chat. So just up the top of your screen, there are a few icons, and there's one that looks like a speaking bubble. That's the chat icon. So if you click that, you'll get something on your right-hand side that you can write your questions in. So I'll be monitoring that tonight, and at the end, we'll do a bit of a Q&A with Kate and Ellie. And just so you know, we are recording this online update tonight, so you'll be able to go back and listen to it again if you needed to have some, re-listen to some of the information, or if anyone's that you know that isn't on, they might be able to watch it at a later time. So what I might do now is just stop sharing this particular screen, and I'm going to just put a video on for you that is from our Have Your Say page, just to give you quite a good summary of our coastal adaptation. So that was just a bit of an intro video, really. Some of you may have seen already. Let's see if this hopefully it does. I'm going to get my cursor onto the right screen. Here we go.
The Northern Bellarine Coast supports different values that are enjoyed in many different ways. Natural processes driven by winds, tides and currents have always shaped our coast. When these processes impact our coastal values, we refer to them as coastal hazards. Coastal hazards that affect our coast are coastal erosion, saline intrusion to our groundwater, storm tide inundation, and permanent inundation. Key areas along the Northern Bellarine coastline are particularly vulnerable to these coastal hazards. This may be due to low-lying or narrow stretches, exposure during storms and tides, and what values and assets are within the area. Our Coastal Adaptation Plan will help us all understand and prepare for future change along our coast. The plan will identify which places, assets and values are most likely to be vulnerable now and into the future, using a risk-based approach to assess potential impacts. Adapting to our changing coastline is a shared responsibility between rights holders, community and land managers. Together, we'll plan for different strategies at unique parts of our coast, placing a high priority on respecting natural processes and strengthening coastal resilience. To find out more, visit our website.
Okay, so that just is a bit of an intro to the Coastal Adaptation Plan. Alison Elsie is going to be, she's the coordinator of coastal planning and environment at Bellarine Bayside, and she's going to be presenting about the project and the plan tonight. So that was just a bit of a segue to get you started, Ali. Take it away.
Thanks so much, Danielle. Everyone can hear me okay? All good? Yes, great. Thank you. I'm just going to get right into it. So just wanted to start by just doing a very quick overview of Bellarine Bayside. So I'm Ali, I'm the Coastal Planning and Programs Coordinator. We manage, at Bellarine Bayside, we manage 17 kilometres of coastal crown land across the townships of Port Arlington, Indented and St Leonards. This includes around 200 hectares of coastal reserve, wetlands, dunes, holiday parks, coastal trails, playgrounds and community facilities. And we're self-funded, which means all income generated through our holiday parks is reinvested back directly into caring for and managing the coast. Because our staff are on the ground every day, maintaining tracks, monitoring the dunes and improving safety, we're often the first to respond to emerging coastal hazards. And we care deeply about this place and work together to strengthen and protect the coast. And that lived experience is one of the reasons we've taken a proactive approach to coastal adaptation to ensure we plan and make decisions from a strong, informed position. So I thought I'd begin by just looking at the climate science used to inform the project. So we know that climate science is predicted to have the following impacts, which is increased average temperatures, decline in average rainfall, more extreme heat, more intense storms and rainfall events, and rising sea levels. And on the coast, climate change isn't just about temperature. Small increases in sea level can change how the waves hit the shore, the storm interacts with the tide, and sand moves sometimes quickly, and sometimes it doesn't come back. And once natural buffers like dunes and wetlands are lost, everything behind them becomes very exposed. And that's why coastal adaptation isn't about a single fix, it's about understanding risk and planning over time. And to understand climate risk on the Bellarine, it helps to understand the unique nature of the Port Phillip Bay, especially on the North Bellarine side. The bay is large and relatively shallow, and it's protected at the great entrance features known as the Great Sands. And can you see me circle that there or not? Maybe I have to go over here. Can you see that? So just here. The Great Sands act as a natural buffer, absorbing and reducing wave energy coming in from Bass Strait. And that's why North Bellarine has calmer waters and narrow sandy beaches, because our waves are generated entirely from the wind. But that protection doesn't mean we have a reduced risk to climate change, because in a sheltered bay, our dunes are small, so any increase in sea level can significantly change how water moves during storms and how big the waves are, which affects inundation levels, erosion, and how sand is redistributed along the coast. And that's why adaptation planning here needs to be place-specific and grounded in local coastal processes. To support this work, we've engaged GHD as our principal consultants to lead the technical development of the Coastal Adaptation Plan. GHD specialise in coastal processes, environmental engineering and climate risk, and we've worked closely with they've worked closely with us, along with project working group representatives from Wadawurrung Traditional Owners Corporation, Parks Victoria and the City of Greater Geelong. The project's been funded by the Victorian Government through the Victorian Resilient Coast Grants, which supports coastal land managers across the state to plan for climate change using consistent science and long-term planning horizons. So the plan isn't being developed in isolation, it's part of a coordinated statewide response. And while we can't predict exactly what the coast will look like in the future, what science does allow us to do is understand how climate change may affect the coastline, understand the dominant coastal processes and drivers of change, and what the most likely coastal hazard types will be. Our adaptation planning is informed by the Port Phillip Bay Coastal Hazard Assessment, which takes in, and this is quite a few things, and environmental data like climate scenarios, evaporation, water depths, tides, waves, windfall and rainfall. It measures elevations, protection structures, drainage and sediment transport, and geomorphology. So this data is then developed into a whole of bay wave model to develop hazard assessments from inundation, erosion, and groundwater. And of course, all the local coastal studies we've also completed over the last few decades. And this gives us a shared evidence base, so decisions aren't reactive or inconsistent, but are grounded in the best available science for this coastline. And looking at this slide, you can see here on the left, you have the potential coastal erosion, and I've just put in the 2070 data sets we've been given. And so the darkest line is for the 2040 potential erosion lines, and the lighter color is the 2070. So this is potential erosion caused by a 1 in 100 year storm. So and on the right, you can see the 1 in 100 year storm. So this is a temporary hazard. However, the coastal erosion could come from that storm. So it's understanding what potential impact we could face with these kind of challenges ahead. The next one is I just want to talk about working with Wadawurrung. We've been guided by them to understand country as an interconnected system where land, water, sky, plants, animals and people are all part of a whole. Wadawurrung have shaped our understanding of values, not as individual items to be ranked or separated, but as elements that are interconnected and mutually dependent. This guidance shapes how we plan for coastal adaptation by ensuring we consider both tangible and intangible values, such as access to country, caring for country, the sharing of stories, and the passing of knowledge through cultural practices. As we move into developing adaptation pathways, we'll continue working alongside Wadawurrung so these pathways reflect their priorities and are guided by their own strategies, such as the 10-year Healthy Country Plan. The Coastal Adaptation Plan isn't a list of projects, and it's not a set of final answers. It's a decision-making tool that will help us ask, what coastal hazards are we facing? What values are within the areas impacted? And what actions can we take now, later, or when conditions change, or if they change? When you read the plan, you'll see it's structured by precinct, which is a specific area along the coast with identified coastal values, and then what risk there is to those values. And lastly, what are the pathways set out clearly for each part of the coast? And this is just listing out the 7 stages of the Coastal Adaptation Plan, which is guided by the Victorian Resilient Coastal Guidelines from the Victorian State Government. It will look at values as stage 2. What coastal values do we care about in each part of that coast? We then look at hazards such as erosion, inundation, sea level rise and groundwater, which is all based on that Port Phillip Bay science. We'll then put those 2 things together to understand the risk, particularly where impacts start to affect access, safety, biodiversity, and cultural connection. And that risk assessment then informs our pathways, which guide how each area of the coast can respond to over time. So just wanted to do a slide on what pathways are. So they are actually the tools, decisions, and works that can manage coastal hazard risk. They're classified under 3 types, such as land management, planning and design, and nature-based engineering. Actions can range from things such as avoiding new permanent infrastructure in high-risk areas, strengthening natural buffers like dunes and vegetation, or designing current infrastructure to be more flexible and resilient. Some cases, planning for long-term change or retreat, and these aren't easy choices, but planning early gives us more options and better outcomes. Artificial reefs is another pathway which can be quite effective in reducing wave energy and trapping sand on the beach. Seagrass meadows, which is quite prominent along our coast, is very effective at reducing wave energy. Coastal vegetation is another one you would see along our coastline, which can stabilise the dune. But just remember that those kind of things take time, and to have revegetation projects work to be effective, we really need to start that years before we need it. So what's this early data telling us? I thought I'd just do a little bit of just a highlight of the Portarlington area, which is the first 4 precincts of the 9 that we have. So precinct 1 is the Flora and Fauna Reserve, Point Richards Flora and Fauna Reserve, and that's pretty much telling us that the biggest risk is actually the storm tide inundation, because it can just come right back into the top part of that reserve. And that one is more at risk at the higher sea level rise scenarios of 0.8. Precinct 2, which is, I'm just going to, so you know where I'm here, just here. So that's pretty much the Portarlington Holiday Park. The biggest risk there is erosion. So one of the adaptation pathways, effective pathways for this area, is sand renourishment, which you're probably aware if you're a local, we do that already, but we'll certainly need to look at that further as time goes on. Precinct 3, which is the township of Portarlington, you can see there in the bottom left. The biggest risk will be at the 0.8 sea level rise scenario, which is 2100, and that'll be the permanent inundations. We'll need to focus on that. And precinct 4, which is a very, very long stretch of very narrow coastline, is the biggest risk for that is erosion, particularly at the 0.5 sea level rise scenario, which is predicted to be around the 2070 timeframe. I just wanted to just quickly just do a little focus on what the pathway will actually look, so that if you're looking at the plan, you've got some idea of how to read it. So this is precinct 4A, which includes the Steels Rock boat ramp, and I've just used that because it is there's a lot of values in this area, so I thought it was a good one to focus on. And this one's particularly vulnerable to coastal hazards and is actually currently experiencing significant erosion. So this is what the pathway looks like, and you can see that hierarchy of order there with the preparation activities, actions, which is actually here, and supporting actions as well. But you see engineering is all the way at the bottom, those sort of more expensive, impactful options down here. And we have the lighter options here, which is avoidance, management, revegetation, nature, and then going into the engineering. So with this one, hang on a second, sorry, I've lost my train of thought there. Yeah, I think it's on the next slide. Oh, sorry, yeah, sorry. So we'll be looking at here is controlled access during risk times. We're looking at doing a bit more of a site-specific cap for this area. That's just because it's quite at risk currently, and we want to have a look at all the values there. Revegetation of the dunes, which can stabilise the beach. Looking at studies to work with other agencies such as Pacific with the intertidal communities. Continuing dune renourishment there, and looking at stormwater infrastructure, which we're currently looking at, and then potentially in the longer term, and you can see here the 2100 timelines there, not really starting there, looking at the coastal trail. So when it's a lighter color like that, we're actually just preparing, we're not actually actioning, but obviously some things take longer to prepare, to have ready, and that's why the actual preparation starts much earlier. And just wanted to give a quick example, like I do a little case study at Ramblers Reef. So this isn't actually our area of management, but it's just to the left of where we start managing at Portarlington, the Point Richards boat ramp. So on the left is the houses there along Ramblers Road, and you can see the artificial reef that was put in there. This image was taken just after it was installed in 2018. And on the right is the current image, and you can see here the significant increase of shoreline from this artificial reef. So the artificial reef here has been excellent at reducing the wave energy, causing sand to build up here over time. And there's thousands of extra cubic meters of sand here and established vegetation. So it's actually increasing the shoreline there. So that was actually conceived by the City of Greater Geelong and was constructed in partnership with the University of Melbourne. So the Coastal Adaptation Plan is currently out for community feedback, and we really need as much community feedback as we can. So we just want to make sure that this plan is addressing your concerns, and also we want to know what your priorities are. You would all have, if you're a local here, you probably together have decades of lived experience, and your observations, your use of the community and recreational spaces is invaluable. I invite you particularly to look at the adaptation pathway section, which is section 9, because that brings together the values, the highest risks, and then the pathways. And the more we hear from you, the better we can shape that final plan. So I just want to say thank you for listening to me today. Climate change is going to continue to shape our Bellarine coast, and what's in our control is whether we respond reactively or plan together, guided by science, culture, and community values. Thank you.
Thanks so much, Ali. The Coastal Adaptation Plan is something, that we all need to work towards, and it is complex, but like you say, it's really important that the community jumps on and says what they value and what they're concerned about, and so that we can make the plan the best it can be. So just don't forget, if you have any questions for Ali, just write them in the chat and we can answer those at the end. So next, Kate is going to talk to us about the Coastal and Marine Management Plan that is currently being drafted. So Kate is the manager of the Coastal Planning and Environment team, and she's going to give her update now. Go for it, Kate.
Thanks so much, Danielle and Ali, for that terrific overview of the Coastal Adaptation Plan. As Danielle said, my name's Kate, and I have the good fortune of working here at Bellarine Bayside and helping to coordinate and work on the planning projects. I'm going to zoom out a little bit now and have a talk about our Coastal and Marine Management Plan, which is our 5-year strategic plan for the Northern Bellarine coast, and will be very much informed by the excellent work that's been led by Ali in the Coastal Adaptation Plan. I'll just talk a bit about what is a Coastal and Marine Management Plan, where we're up to, and how you can find out more and get involved in the planning process. So can you see my screen there okay? Very good. Bear with me when I just... So our Coastal and Marine Management Plan that we're developing now will help guide us and set our direction for the period 2026 to 2031. So what is a Coastal Marine Management Plan? It's basically a local strategic plan to help us guide how we manage the Crown land asset that we manage, notwithstanding that it's also Wadawurrung country. It sets out how coastal land managers will achieve the marine and coastal policy, which is our policy setting for coastal Crown land in Victoria. And why do we need to have a Coastal Marine Management Plan? Well, the Coastal Marine Management Plan gives us the opportunity to implement an agreed vision for this place. Everyone has, I suppose, and comes to living on the coast and working on the coast for a range of different values that they appreciate and care about. And by doing the Coastal Marine Management Plan, we get to consider all of those values and aspirations and try to work out a set of directions and policies and strategies that meet as many of those aspirations as possible. So through this planning process, we can consider all of the different competing objectives and uses, and we can prioritise them in a way that effectively translates Victoria's coastal policy into on-ground action here on the Northern Bellarine. So it's also a requirement for us under the Marine and Coastal Act as coastal Crown land managers and as a committee of management to undertake a CMMP or a Coastal Marine Management Plan. And in doing that, we have to ensure that the plan aligns with the Marine and Coastal Policy and Strategy and Act. We have to ensure that we review our plan every 5 years, which is the planning process we're currently undertaking. And we have to ensure that we engage with traditional owners and the Wadawurrung. And as Danielle mentioned, we've been very fortunate and have learned so much already in the planning process by the really generous and knowledgeable input from Wadawurrung Traditional Owners Aboriginal Corporation. Our Coastal Marine Management Plan will essentially translate the policy that the state government sets at a big picture into what our on-ground actions are here on the Northern Bellarine. And one of those, very importantly, is the work that Ali's leading to ensure that the work we do considers coastal hazards and the viability of various assets. It's also more recently now guided by the Department of Environment, Energy and Climate Change, or DECA's guidelines on how to develop a marine and coastal management plan. So since our current plan, there have been some new frameworks and guidelines provided by DECA, and we'll be updating our plan to align with those as well. And our plan will require ministerial approval once we prepare the draft. So as I mentioned, we're not starting from scratch. So Bellarine Bayside already has a coastal marine management plan, which is current, and we have evaluated our progress in delivering that plan, and we have pretty much delivered, around 80% of the actions. Some of the actions in the plan we've learned have sort of been a little bit beyond our remit. So there is some stuff that, for example, talks about joining with the Bellarine Rail Trail, and some of those strategies haven't been achieved. And some strategies set out to achieve tasks that are no longer a priority, but by and large, we've been very successful in implementing the existing plan. And this new planning process is a chance for us to sort of reset, consider what emerging priorities they are and what community aspirations are and traditional owner aspirations are, and draft another plan. And as I mentioned earlier, we are required to do that every 5 years. So in doing the planning process, we've undertaken a gap analysis, just checking in on how our current plan stacks up against the guidelines that DECA would like us to follow in developing our coastal marine management plan. And there are some things that we can bring forward. There are some things we probably need to change, and in particular, engaging effectively with traditional owners and bringing in the climate science and coastal adaptation work into our plan is very important under those guidelines. So there is a process step similar to the coastal adaptation planning. There are some process steps that are required by those coastal marine management plan guidelines. So I'll just run through what those steps are and where we're up to. So the first step is define scope and scale of the coastal and marine management plan. So in the early stages of the planning, we did consider whether or not it would be worthwhile to incorporate all of the coastal land along the Northern Bellarine, and there are some parcels of land that aren't managed by Bellarine Bayside. So there's a City of Greater Geelong parcels of land as well that are contiguous with the coastal Crown land that Bellarine Bayside manages. But it was decided that we would do our plan for the area that Bellarine Bayside manage, and that we'd do it for a 5-year period. So in terms of step 2, engaging with rights holders, stakeholders and traditional owners, we have engaged really meaningfully, and we're very grateful for the generosity of Wadawurrung in engaging with us in development of our plan. We recently met with Wadawurrung and had a really meaningful and helpful workshop which set us in some really good direction with developing our strategy. We've also been very fortunate to be supported, as Ali outlined, with the Coastal Adaptation Plan by our governance groups in our project control group and working group with Parks Victoria, City of Greater Geelong and DECA, as well as Wadawurrung, and we've gained some really good insights from there, as well as our round 1 of community engagement in January earlier in the year. We got some excellent sort of guidance from community about what mattered most of all to community in terms of the values on the Northern Bellarine and what were some of the concerns. And we've also had a very thorough engagement with our neighbouring stakeholders and our own staff and committee to sort of help us understand the things that matter to people. We've also developed a project logic, which is basically the framework for our plan, starting with objectives, strategies, and strategic actions. And we're now up to the stage of drafting our CMMP based on all of that input. The next steps will be for us to present the draft CMMP to our Committee of Management and to DECA for ministerial approval. And once that occurs, we will release the CMMP for community engagement and public comment. And then we'll also prepare a MERI framework, which is a monitoring evaluation framework. And then we will also prepare an implementation plan. So in terms of that program logic or the framework for the plan, early on in the planning process, our Committee of Management did some strategic work and decided the best way for us to formulate our plan was to work around 4 strategic pillars. So those strategic pillars are cultural heritage, which we've touched on, that this whole North Bellarine is extremely significant and important Wadawurrung country. And is very rich with cultural heritage. And so this cultural heritage is something that is one of our highest priorities to protect and to help engage and inform the community about, as well as supporting Wadawurrung to have access to country, to continue connections to country, and to help advocate the broader community about cultural heritage of the area. And so our CMMP will outline strategies as guided by Wadawurrung on how we should go about doing that. Another really important strategic area for us and value on the Northern Bellarine coast is the environmental values. And this really came through in our first round of community engagement. What we heard from yourselves and the broader community is that the natural values along the Northern Bellarine are extremely important to community and are really representative of what matters here. And so we will have a heavy focus in our plan on protecting what we have and even to some degree expanding on the area of land that is occupied by native vegetation so that we can strengthen habitat and protection for wildlife as well as plants. The social and visitor experience is another really important strategic area that we'll focus on and develop strategy for. And when we talk about that, it's mainly around the day visit experience. So the Bellarine Trail, obviously, Coastal Trail, really important asset for community and probably one of our main focus areas, as well as various other visitor sites and assets. And then finally, and probably really importantly for us as an organisation and the community, is our community and economy strategic area, which really focuses around our holiday park business and other commercial activities that generate income for Bellarine Baysides to help us to manage the rest of the coast and continue to provide a really good holiday experience, as well as events and other commercial permits. Wrapped around that, of course, is our own organisational structure and policies which we use to run the organisation, as well as the adaptive management cycle. But these parts, the blue and grey parts of the framework, won't be specifically outlined in the Coastal and Marine Management Plan. They'll be dealt with through our own internal corporate plan and policies. So we have been busy drafting up the very first draft of our Coastal Marine Management Plan, and that's basically brought together the strategies, objectives and the vision around those pillar areas. And so we're busy getting that prepared for our committee in May. So in terms of the timeline and where we're up to, we really started the process late in 2024 and then checked in with community in our stage 1 engagement process and gathered some really good direction on the things that mattered that we should focus on. And then in June 2025, our Committee of Management has endorsed our approach and our broad strategic directions. Since then, we've worked with our stakeholders and our staff in having some workshops to develop and support drafting of more detailed strategies. We're also going to implement some spatial planning in our coastal and marine management plan to help us really be clear ourselves as an organisation about what our intent and focus is across the coastal reserves, as Ali said, the 17 kilometres, by identifying what are our areas where we want to focus on recreational opportunity and development, and where are the areas where we really want to protect biodiversity and focus more on conservation, and then of course our holiday parks areas. So through that spatial planning, we'll be able to really outline what our intention is, and also check in with community on whether that makes sense and works as well. And then, as I mentioned, in May, we'll submit a draft coastal marine management plan to our committee of management, and then in June to the department for ministerial approval. And then we're hoping soon after that to be able to release our draft coastal and marine management plan to the community to receive their comment and feedback. And if all things go to plan, we'll have our final coastal marine management plan released around September this year. So thank you for your time, and if you have any questions, we're more than happy to take those.
Thanks, Kate. Just had to unmute myself. There's been a lot of work that's gone into this, and yeah, it's going to be really interesting to read it when it comes out. Does anyone have any questions? There hasn't been any questions on the chat so far. What we might do is, because there's not actually that many people on this chat, we could probably just put the cameras on, and if anyone wants to just make a comment or ask a question to Kate or Ali about the projects, then it's probably the easiest way to do it. Okay, so Bruce is just wondering how the CAP relates, so the CMMP relates to the CAP. So
I'm happy to answer that, Danielle. Yeah, thanks, Bruce, for that question. It's a really good one. So essentially, the CMMP is the primary planning instrument for committees of management like us, but the Coastal Adaptation Plan is such an important plan to help us understand, for example, where we might invest in infrastructure, for example. So for us to get Marine and Coastal Act consent, which we have to get for any infrastructure along the coast, we need to demonstrate that that's a viable investment, and that the area, you know what I mean, won't be inundated in 5 years or 10 years or 20 years. And if it is, then the accommodate is the pathway strategy, but that makes sure that the infrastructure is designed to accommodate coastal hazards if that case may be. Also importantly, our strategies around, our protection of the environment and stuff need to consider what the actual prospects are when you look at the likely impacts of climate change. So we might, for example, plant different species of trees in the Point Richards Flora Reserve, where it looks like groundwater inundation could occur in the future, things which are salt tolerant and deep rooted to help support ongoing habitat and vegetation in the reserve. So it's just that really important evidence base to help make sure that investments we make, even things like the Coastal Trail, we can start planning now for our realignments or different upgrades to that will accommodate inundation or various coastal hazard impacts, so that we can ensure that Coastal Trail is there for people to use and enjoy for as long as possible. I hope that in part at least answers your question. There are many other aspects, but I don't want to take up your whole night.
Does anyone else have any questions for Kate or Ali? Wow, well, you just must have covered everything.
Ronnie.
Oh, here we go. Ronnie?
Can you hear me?
We can.
Yeah, I don't have a question. Sorry, and I'm just on Port Arlington Road in transit. That's why I don't have my camera on and dipping in and out. I just wanted to say, thanks for the great presentation, and it's clear to hear the expertise and the thinking and the consultation with the community and government that's occurring behind it. So my congratulations to you, and I look forward to the and thank you also for the work that you're doing. I look forward to the next round of consultation and seeing what the plan looks like. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, Ronnie. That's really kind feedback. Yeah, that makes it all worthwhile when people, yeah, say things like that. So thank you. If I just wanted to say, because we didn't actually mention it earlier about the survey that we've got for the Coastal Adaptation Plan at the moment. If you haven't had your say already, then it would be great if you could get on the Have Your Say page. You can get to it via our social media or through the Have Your Say section on the Ballarat and Bayside website. There's a lot of information on there about coastal adaptation, and there's a plan there that you could download, and there's a survey that basically just asks, you know, have we missed anything in the planning process? Have we missed any hazards that you know about? Have we missed any values that are important to you? And is there you're able to go through each precinct and see the adaptation pathways, and it asks you if you think it's appropriate, or if there's another way that you think that could occur. So it just would be really great if you could jump on there and just have your say, and it just helps us with the planning, the prioritising, and the more people that are on there, the more robust our process is. So is there anyone else who has a question? Otherwise, we might finish up early. Doesn't sound like it. Okay. Well, thank you very much, everyone, for attending tonight. If you do have any questions at a later time, you can always contact us via the contact us email address that's on the website. Otherwise, enjoy the last of the evening. It's beautiful out there.
Thanks, everyone. Thanks for coming.
Thank you. See you
Thanks,
next time.
everyone. Bye.
Bye.